In the Chinese case, people have really got to be educated. Looking at the Chinese people, the challenge for the Chinese government, and which they discuss with us often, is how do you educate their own people about what is happening in other countries and persuade them that there is relevance to studying those things. And this is why one of the things the Chinese government is doing, examples I gave, looking at other countries and trying to learn from that and telling their own people that there is relevance to be seen over here. So it's a question of difference, but not of necessarily of superiority or inferiority.
How does it come in the concept of the imperial concept? Doesn't come in the sense of expansion, in the sense of domination outside?
No, domination, in fact, as I said, China has historically been really within its own areas, geographically. The extent of the Chinese borders today are what they were 300 years ago in the Qing dynasty, give or take a few miles here or there. Otherwise, whether by sea or land, they have really not expanded beyond these historic boundaries. That concept has never occurred. In fact, China was endowed with a whole lot of natural resources itself, so they really didn't have to go out and do this kind of thing. In fact, others came to, whether it was tea or silk and so on, to take all those things, and that's really what happened. The smaller West European countries, which were small and didn't have resources, had to go for resources elsewhere. But the Middle Kingdom and all under heaven, the terminologies are such. There is a misinterpretation to think that all under heaven means China wants to rule everything that is under heaven. No. All under heaven is somewhat like what we would translate as the word universal. That is closer to the meaning than a territorial kind of feeling. About Wen Jiabao. Wen Jiabao, the interesting thing about him is he is a Buddhist, and he actually said so in that speech after the earthquake. As Sudhindra has written, one of his most remarkable articles is about Wen Jiabao and the personality of the man. And he conveys a very different image from the traditional Chinese Politburo member who is wearing a suit and very kind of expressionless and not wanting to display emotion. And in fact, I believe that Wen Jiabao is that way has made a huge impact because of his ability to convey feeling and to convey emotion and to kind of portray himself, perhaps crying or shedding tears or whatever it may be, but not in that very controlled, impassive kind of way. Women's issues, very interesting. As I said, in Confucius' time, there were no women students because that time the social setup was such that women were not empowered to that extent. But interestingly enough, in the 5 relationships that I just mentioned, husband and wife is mentioned as one of them, which is quite interesting and quite indicative, because at very much the same time when the Athenian democracy was around, in Athens, women could not participate and slaves could not participate. So I think Confucius would have been, had he lived today, would have been quite comfortable with the situation of women in China today. Actually, women in China are, I would say, in a very remarkable situation because men in China feel very comfortable. I can tell you as a traveler that very often, if I travel in the US or in Europe, and if I have to ask directions, and if there was a single woman walking on the other side of the street, I would feel a little hesitant crossing the street and asking her for directions. But in China, you don't have that hesitation, because I think this is something more than Confucius. I think it's a contribution of Mao. The communist revolution actually ushered in that feeling of equality. Russia. Well, the Chinese view here, they studied Russia very carefully. The Chinese view, Rajesh asked about why Russia toppled and China didn't. Chinese view is that the Russians had political liberalization first and then did economic liberalization. There was their downfall because the political liberalization did not happen as planned, and rather than a true democracy, you had some kind of oligarchic situation. They grabbed all the economic goodies and the whole thing fell apart. And that's why they were very keen that in China it would not happen that way, that would be the other way around. First it will be economic liberalization, and then a gradualistic, as I mentioned, a Confucianistic, slow seeping in of political liberalization.
Yeah.
This side.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. And then on this side. And my field is rural development and environment. Very nice to hear that Confucius talks is creeping in the system, Chinese system. Within a few years, China will be economically top in the world. And hopefully, the same thing which is happening with other economy, ruling the world, will not happen with China, and the Confucian thought will be buried again like the good old empires. Hope. That's my hope. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, my name is Asad. I would like to know that what is the underlying cause of the ferment in Tibet and Xinjiang province? Because it is what you are talking about, disparity has been very much widened. So it is stated that Han ethnic group is dominating on this periphery in the name of development. So there is a great deal of alienation. And second question I would like to know, people say that when an area is developed, it really creates a sort of liberal space, then institutions are built up, and then democracy really flourished on. But why it is not in consonance with the China case? China has developed a lot, but why democratic space has not created? I would like to know.
Spender?
So, my name is Spencer Vadia. I'm a scientist in TI firm. I have two questions. One is that there is no analog of the Needham study for the science and civilization of India, actually, and I'd like you to enlighten us. What is it in Chinese society, their records, their history, their societal outlook, that made a study of the type that Needham did possible, which is not there in India? The second thing is that China didn't really ever come up with a religion. Can you also comment on that, please? Thank you.
We'll just have one final question from Matthew.